Hey friends, how are you? My name is Jared. I am a former police officer. I had an 18-year career in law enforcement, and I'm out of that career now. And currently I am a professional artist and a presenter, and I use those terms loosely. But I wanted to talk to you about my former career of being a first responder, because it's so much of who I am, and it's close to my heart, and the people that are still in those roles as first responders, whether it be paramedics, firefighters, my fellow police officers, so forth. I know there's a lot of people out there that are struggling, and a lot of people that could, I feel, relate to my message. So I just wanted to share part of that with you all. And when it comes to PTSD, it can be a big, complicated thing, or at least it can seem that way. So I see it as an iceberg, and it can also go in so many different directions when it comes to the conversation of PTSD or complex PTSD or the symptoms that come with those. So I'll try to keep it as streamlined as I can. But the thing is, I'm still in my healing journey as we record this message. I'm still walking the walk. I'm doing what I can to heal and move forward. And it's definitely a worthwhile thing, taking steps for you to move forward and to heal. It's a scary, dark, miserable place when you sit alone with those symptoms. So there is quite a bit of hope, and I'm so thankful to be where I'm at right now. My original intent was to wait until I'm healed, and then I can move forward and speak eloquently and be clear and concise with my message, but that doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon, so here I am. So I wanted to speak really briefly about what I do currently, and what I do currently is something that I've done all along. Art has always been a big part of my life. I considered majoring in art after high school. I thought I would go the safe career and go into law enforcement, but I've always had art, and I consider art to be one of my saving graces when it comes to dealing with and moving forward through the complex PTSD and all the symptoms that come with it. So next to me here is a piece of art that I made. My art has always been very abstract. So kind of my process is to not think, but just do. So when it comes to the canvas, I'll just throw out various shapes, colors, hope that it's a good design with good color, but for the most part, there's always a lot of meaning and intention in those paintings. The one next to me is quite a bit different. This is a painting that's untitled. It has the 22 slash marks on it, and those represent the 22 powerful events or major incidents or traumatic events that all played a part in my complex post-traumatic stress over my career in law enforcement. But really, what really made a difference and mattered for the negative is those days in between these powerful events, these traumatic events. it's really the day-to-day stress career, and that really shapes and molds your nervous system and ratchets it down into the negative. So every day my body was creating a new normal as I was in this stress career, as I was working in the mud and the muck, and it did that until its normal was complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is kind of well, not kind of, this is a painting that has to do with that. And the writing on that painting is pretty much an afterthought. It is the symptoms that I had as I went through my career. And what's really crazy is I didn't even know I had these symptoms. I was the last one to know that there was a problem. For years, it was everybody else that had the problem. So looking back, hindsight is perfect. When I see these symptoms, I just shake my head, and it's disappointing that I didn't realize it at the time, but it's so bizarre to explain, and these symptoms that come on so sneaky, it really is fascinating and interesting how the mind works. So I want to get into some of these symptoms with you all. And I think we're going to find, if you're a first responder, if you've experienced trauma in your life, if you've been in the military, I think you're going to find that a lot of these symptoms resonate with you. And the important thing to know is PTSD, complex PTSD, it's very similar, but it looks different for everybody. And one of the things that kept me from getting help toward the end of my career when I knew something was wrong was, well, I know something's wrong, but what I have going on isn't what I saw in this other person who I know has PTSD or whatever mental health issue may be. So it looks different for everybody, and I just want to get that across. And just because you may have some of the symptoms that I have doesn't mean you're diagnosable at all. It simply means that you should really pay attention to those symptoms and take steps for you when it comes to those symptoms, because they're there for a reason, and it's really important to do what you can to look into that. So one of the things when it comes to my complex post-traumatic stress disorder is it totally blew apart my memory. And that's been a huge frustration. I'll probably say the word frustration often throughout these videos, but it's been an extreme frustration. Part of my assignment as a police officer I had a lot of different assignments to build bridges within our community, with the Somali community, with the Hispanic, Latino community. So I was able to speak to people, and I was able to speak eloquently, or at least I thought I was able to speak eloquently. And I was part of the crisis negotiator team for my department. So I was a professional in communication. I knew how to speak, and this just has totally blown that apart, and it's been such an extreme frustration. And part of my thing now is I have to refer to my notes sometimes. So if you don't mind, I'll be glancing at my notes as we talk about these symptoms that came into my life. And I was able to put these in order, if you notice the painting next to me, the symptoms are not in order. They're just thrown onto the board. But at any rate, we'll just get into some of these symptoms. All right, so when it came to my symptoms, I started my career, and I'm dating myself, in 2001. It was at the beginning of 2001. And I was so extremely happy, so excited to start my career. I couldn't believe I was getting paid to be a cop. It was just all excitement, it was all action. I couldn't get enough of it. I put the profession above everything in my life, and I put it in front of everything in my life. As I was growing up, I was told being a police officer, being a first responder, it's a calling. And I kept hearing that over and over from so many people, it's a calling, it's a calling. And religion was a big part of my life as I was growing up. So when I heard the phrase, it's a calling, that's not something that I took lightly. To me, a calling was, this is a message from God, that this is what you're intended to do. So I took it very serious. So I figured a message from God, something that I was intended to do, was something that I would have to put my whole self into and be all in with. And not only be all in with, but be way above and beyond being all in with that profession. It meant that that came first. And I was okay with it because it was such an exciting thing. I couldn't get enough of it. It was my everything. It went in front of my family, it went in front of me, it went in front of everything. So that's where I was when I started my career. I've always had a strong work ethic. That's very important to me. So I was ready to go, and that's what I did. I worked extremely hard, and it was exciting. It was a huge adventure. I was making big arrests. I was writing warrants. I was doing drug investigations. It was quite the time, and I stayed pretty busy. So that was the beginning of my career. I couldn't wait. I thought it'd be great. I'd get my 30 years in, then I would retire and I'd have my coffee party and life would be great. I would ride off into the sunset. But as I went through my career, after several years, I was having a hard time keeping that pace. I wanted to work hard. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to help people. But I could feel some of these symptoms and how they affected my life. But I just wrote them off. I continued to just plow forward. I thought, I'm above the symptoms. I'm better than the symptoms. I can outthink my symptoms. Therefore, I would just keep going. And that's what I did. Over time, that 30-year career that I thought would be so easy to achieve turned to 20 years. I'm like, well, if I can make it to 20 years, then that would be good. Things would be fine. I wouldn't beat myself up over for not making it 30 years. And eventually that 20 years changed to 15, or that's how many years I expected to work beyond where I was in the moment. And it just kept progressing to, I just hope to make it through this year. So it's amazing how things changed over time. But one thing that I wanted to get across is that whole idea of a calling. My philosophy has changed over time. I think it's important to kind of keep things in perspective. I do believe my calling is to serve other people. I believe the reason why I'm on this earth is to serve and to help others. It's just, I'm not doing that in the capacity that I had been. In fact, now that I've left law enforcement, I'm finding that I can serve others better than I ever thought I could. So that has been a real blessing for me. So I just wanted to get that across. And now I'd like to get into these symptoms. So as I started work, I worked rotating shifts. So we flip-flop from days to nights and nights to days. And the shifts were 12 hours, so it was 6 o'clock a.m. until 6 o'clock p.m. And the night shift was 6 o'clock p.m. until 6 o'clock a.m. So that's how it went. And it was a constant 4 days on, 4 days off. And after a month of working days, we would switch to nights. And then we would rotate back. So that's just to explain a little bit of the rotation and how, how our hours were on patrol. So I first noticed a difficult time sleeping. And I wrote that off because nobody that I'd ever talked to in law enforcement would sleep well. So I just thought, well, this is just part of the career. This is just part of the deal. And by difficult time sleeping, I mean it's just hard to fall asleep and hard to stay asleep, especially in those transition times. For me, I am such a daytime wired person. I'm at my best in the daytime. I'm not meant to be awake in the night. So then when I was working nights, it was a difficult time sleeping during the day. So I knew that was part of the job and it was a frustration, but like I said, I figured I would just plow forward and not worry about it. And plus I figured I was young at the time, so my body could handle it, so I didn't have anything to worry about. So difficulty sleeping was the first symptom. And that moved into grinding my teeth when I did sleep. And then I also noticed that my jaw would be set and always clenched. So that was the second symptom that I noticed came about. My sore jaw, and I think that also caused some of the headaches, which is a symptom that I'll get to shortly. So grinding my teeth was a problem and continued to be a problem and still continues to be a problem. I recently went to the dentist and found out I need quite a bit of dental work as a result of teeth grinding. I always took pride in my smile. I never had braces. I've never had a cavity. So I thought that grinding my teeth, having my jaw clenched wouldn't be a big deal. But it is a big deal, and it was a big deal. And it was an indicator that there was some unresolved stress there too. So that was a symptom. Another symptom that I had early on was acne and rashes. My skin would break out when I was stressed. That's something that's always been a frustration. I thought that I was still in high school. and that's something that still happens when I have a stressful event coming. If I know something is going to be going on, if I get stressed, then I will break out. And it, again, incredibly frustrating. And that's something that I noticed at the time too, way back when, within my first few years of working, but it's something that I didn't think about as being a consequence to stress, but it is. And it has to do with your hormones and everything being, not being in alignment. And then that moved into, well, it didn't move into, but then I started to notice I had digestive issues, which is an embarrassing one to talk about. But it's something that we joked about so frequently in the first responder world because it is such a typical symptom. You have upset stomach, you may have a difficult time controlling your bowels, and it was so frequent with so many people, we would just laugh about it and write it off. And I think this is such an embarrassment for a lot of people that it is a difficult thing to talk about. But it's important for me to talk about this thing with all of you because it is a deal and it does happen. My digestive issues, started with the upset stomach, being uncomfortable, feeling bloated. And that continued throughout my career until the end of my career where it was I couldn't control my bowels. And there was a few times where I actually went in my pants. And it's so embarrassing, but thank goodness I lived in the town I worked in, and it didn't happen on my way to or from a call, so I was able to stop and get that fixed. But it was extremely embarrassing, and it is unfortunately a part of first responder life, and it's something that we should be able to talk about, and you should be aware of, because it is a big indicator too of stress and its effects on your body. So digestive issues, and then I mentioned the headaches. Headaches would come, and it was interesting because my headaches would come when I was on duty, before I was getting ready to go on duty. It all revolved around my first responder life. And I didn't see the correlation at the time, but obviously it's clear now. It was a result of the stress. It was my body telling me that I should be paying attention and that there was some stuff going on that wasn't resolved. So the headaches, and then the next symptoms that I noticed was being easily startled. At first, it was a big aim to my family and extended family to scare Jared with bugs and so forth, but it wasn't. It was not that I was afraid of bugs, because I'm not. I was afraid of being startled. I absolutely hated being startled. I had this huge startle reflex, and when I would get startled, I couldn't see the difference from, it was as though I was on the street being threatened. I remember an occasion where my young son threw a balled up sock at me, and it startled me so bad, and I totally went off on him and treated him like he was some perpetrator on the street, and it's not an excuse for that behavior, but it's just an indicator that my nervous system was starting to get trashed out, and I should have been paying attention to that. And it's really embarrassing, but it's really it's fascinating. There's no difference between how you see loved ones and how you see someone on the street when you're in those moments. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be going through more of my symptoms in coming videos, but for now I'd like to leave you with some tools and strategies that could help you immediately. And one thing that you should be doing daily, if you can, is yoga. And all that is think of it as sport stretching. Stretching is huge for your body, for your nervous system. If you could do stretches every day, just for at least a few minutes a day, that can make a huge difference for you, a big positive difference, I should say. So that's a good tool to utilize. And another thing that you could be doing that would be extremely beneficial is using a heavy blanket. Weighted blankets are so helpful when it comes to calming your nervous system. So if you could wrap yourself in a weighted blanket and use noise canceling headphones at the same time, you can stare at a TV program that's safe. You could just watch nature, close your eyes, whatever you'd like. Try to align it with something positive. But wrap yourself in a weighted blanket, put on noise canceling headphones. You can do that as needed during the day, or you can do it 3 times a day for 20 minutes each time. That would make a huge difference with your nervous system as well. All right, so those are things you can utilize right now as you're in these daily stressful careers, as you're working through your traumas. So this is something not only for first responders, but absolutely military, for victims of violence, for so many people that know, there's so many people that know trauma. Trauma isn't confined to a certain race, to certain colors, to certain, doesn't matter what your background is or your lot in life is. I mean, trauma can affect everybody. So those are tools that we all can utilize, and I really encourage you to utilize those. And stay tuned for additional videos. Thank you so much, and be well.